This is the signal for you to pay attention to. Social networks and music taste is bureaucracy an outdated model. Basically, McDonald's, it's a type of format of how corporate America is dealing with all Americans. Now, you're probably wondering what kind of textbooks. This is actually my sociology book from like a really long time ago. Because, like I said, I told you I've been out of college for a while. Are our music choices a matter of personal taste or an example of conforming behavior? We tend to think of the music that we listen to as an intensely personal choice, made independently of the people around us, and that reflects our individual personalities. How much, however, do our social networks determine our most personal of decisions, like our aesthetic tastes? Social scientist Matthew Seganik, Peter Dodds, and Duncan Watts of 2006 conducted research to test the effects of the influence of social networks on music choices. To do so, they created an artificial culture market on a website named Music Lab. Over 14,000 participants registered with the site and were asked to listen to music and bands that they were unfamiliar with and then rate the songs. If they liked the music, they could download songs. The researchers must first divided their sample into two groups. The control group was unable to use the website to see what other participants were listening to. The second group, the social influence group, was able to see that other participants on the website were listening to as well as downloading the social influence group was further divided into 8 worlds, and participants could only see the rankings and numbers of the downloaded of people in the world. The researchers found that in the social influence groups, the most popular songs were more popular than those in the control group. That is, when the participants knew what songs were favored by others, they were more likely to favor those songs themselves. And those most popular songs in each world was also different, providing further evidence of the importance of the group influence. So let me propose the idea that as an American society, what if we were all living in 8 to 9 different dimensions of realities or realistic worlds within the United States of America? What if we are the multiverse simultaneously from minute to minute, second to second, day to day, hour to hour? What if what's going on in Texas, like in San Antonio, Texas, is not going on in Uvalde, Texas, is not going on in Crystal City, is not going on in Carrizo Springs? What if I told you that in certain locations of where we thrive and live, there are frequent things happening and then there are slower processes occurring, right? So, the authors of the study describe the effect of social networks as a cumulative advantage, where if one object happens to be slightly more popular than another at just the right point, it will tend to become more popular still. As a result, even in tiny random fluctuations can blow up, generating potential enormous long-term or long-run differences among even indistinguishable competitors, a phenomenon that is similar in some ways to the famous butterfly effect from chaos theory, Watts 2007. And if you guys don't believe me about this, there was a movie that came out around this time called The Butterfly Effect. But I wouldn't recommend inviting that type of theory into your life, only because the butterfly effect has like negative consequences on both sides and nobody wins. Their study revealed the impact of our social networks, which are now increasingly virtual networks, on our music decisions. Studying how consumers make decisions is a part of a much deeper sociological traditional that is concerned with conformity, propaganda, and the question of how leaders have persuaded whole populations to take part in horrific deeds. Primary example, this is still relevant today, primarily I would say because of the Trump administration. I'm not making accusations or anything, but a lot of people were afraid when he was finally elected into office. And even now with all the policy changes, we literally have 2 dual realities side by side existing throughout various cities and states throughout America. And if you pay close attention from this from a home perspective, just observing the news, you will witness this. The Holocaust, which claimed the lives of more than 6 million Jews and others, left many social scientists searching to understand how, why, and under what conditions ordinary people will conform to authority. Now, I'm class of 2001. I graduated from a high school at that time, and I also went to junior college for a few years and then would leave that because they didn't have what I was looking for as a fashion design student, and then I would go to an art academy almost a decade later. But I recall throughout my whole entire education from 1988 till 2013 that we've always spoken of the Holocaust. We always knew the damage that Hitler imposed upon the Jews. And he didn't just do this to white Jews, he did this to black Jews as well, German Jews. And so the point I'm getting at is that people are terrified that things will repeat all over again. This is where I say it's necessary to pray. Regardless of how you perceive your God or your religion, you need to pray that something like that doesn't happen in the world. Whether it's the Jews or some other ethnicity or some other religious organization or faction. To live in fear like that is just simply horrific. And from what I've been hearing and experiencing in reality, JW Org has been under a lot of threats lately, even though we were not the threat. I don't know where the threats are coming from, but they're like seriously on high alert. To understand how, why, and under what conditions ordinary people will conform to authority. Many students who have seen or read about Milgram's experiments discussed earlier in this chapter tend to think that they would not conform to the demands of an authority figure the way the study participants did. Yet the music market study reveals how social environments impact behavior and how well all times conform to the movements of the larger social groups, even in something as personal as music that we like. How do you think social influence affects your own presumably personal decisions? Welcome to the Music Lab at Columbia University. Click here to start. Click here to start. Welcome to the Music Lab at Columbia University. Free music downloads. Click here to start. So, the transformation of management. Traditional Western forms of management are a hierarchical or authoritarian, whereas corporations in Japan, for example, typically focus on management-worker relations and try to ensure that employees of all levels feel a personal attachment to the company. The Japanese emphasis on teamwork, consensus-building approaches, and broad-based employees. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this form of management concerning corporations is because, as you know, the deadlines for your IRS forms, if you want to evolve your small business into a small S corporation, which is the 2553 form, I believe the deadline is March 11th or March 13th. But the point is, you don't have to go with the authoritarian form of hierarchical corporation for your structured company. You can consider doing it the Japanese way. And not only from what I'm reading from this book, but I actually did grow up going to elementary school in Japan. And outside of just going to school, my father and mother were often invited to other corporate owners' dinner parties and stuff. And so I do recall going to some of these parties. I remember meeting a bonsai tree farmer who had a technology company, and he did sell computers and whatnot. And we would go visit his computer shops back then. This is like in 1992 or 1993. So I do know that this structure of corporation concerning consensus building approaches is true. That is not a lie. And to this day, the Japanese probably still operate this way. As a result, in the 80s, many Western organizations began to introduce new management techniques in order to rival the productivity and the competitiveness of their Japanese counterparts. So just because we're American citizens and the government has sold out to corporations doesn't mean that all corporations are authoritative or totalitarian. It doesn't even mean that everything is about mass control. It's also about offering choices to employees and electoral votes. If you know anything about establishing your S corporation or small business S corporation, when you file with the IRS, you become the elect. And that also empowers your employees or potential future employees to vote. And so that was where I was resonating so frequently with so many different ministries when I would either donate or tithe a $2 bill. It has nothing to do with mafiosos or the grandfather or the Godfather. It has to do with women from Alabama in the 1960s where they were forced to pay to vote. Black women in Alabama were forced to pay to vote. I had already been aware of that. Apparently, a lot of other black people were not aware of it, which is really sad and ridiculous. But voting technically in this time and era is free. Yet so many people take advantage of it and don't even see it as important. They feel like they need to be neutral and choose the alternative of not getting involved. But then those end up becoming the same people that make the mistake of complaining, which is really, really sad because once you do get involved, you can see the benefits of how it can help you and your family. It's just a matter of doing research on the people that you're going to be voting for. And that can take a little more time because then you may find out, I like this particular candidate from the get go, from what I've learned about them. But as I go further along and I'm watching their actions on television, or I'm watching the decisions they're currently making or in the future, and I don't like where they're going with that, then it becomes like an issue. Well, I've changed my mind. And as American citizens, we are allowed to change our minds. This is the only part in which I agree with Bobby Brown or Britney Spears. It's your prerogative to change your mind. So going forward, two popular branches of management theory, human resource management and the corporate culture approach, have since been adopted by Western organizations. Human resource management is a style of management that regards a company's workforce as vital to its economic competitiveness. If the employees are not completely dedicated to the firm and its product, the firm will never be a leader in its field. To generate employee enthusiasm and commitment, the entire organizational culture must be retooled so that the workers feel they have an investment in the workplace and in the work process. You see, corporations have sold out today because people are just settling for a paycheck and talking about dental and eye insurance or health insurance, but they're not really getting the perks out of it anymore. But corporations back in the 80s and 90s were all about benefiting its employees, offering other incentives, maybe higher PTO or, paid vacation at a higher rate. That's not really happening anymore. The corporate culture is closely related to human resource management to promote loyalty to the company and pride in its work. The company's management work with the employee to build an organizational culture involving rituals, events, or traditions unique to the company. These cultural activities are designed to draw all members of the firm, from the most senior managers to the newest employees, together so that they make common cause with each other and strengthen each solidarity. Company picnics, casual Fridays, days on which employees can dress down, and company sponsored community service projects are examples of technicals for building a corporate culture. So I'm all too aware of this casual corporate stance, and it has been watered down to where you could pretty much dress in a t-shirt and jeans. I'm not hating, but because I went to an art corporation school to get my degree, we were encouraged to dress professional but trendy at the same time. And if we were conducting literal fashion shows or fashion shoots or fashion films on the campus, of course, we got to design the dress code ourselves. But I can see how much of today, unless you're like at a really high standing elaborate firm, excuse me, I'm thinking about dress forms. I don't know why I'm thinking about dress forms. Then you're expected to wear a suit with a tie and a button down collared shirt. But a lot of other firms are like business casual, where business casual today is just boots, jeans, a polo shirt, or maybe a sweater. And it's like that every single day. Even substitute teachers and teachers have a more elaborate dress code than most corporate firms in San Antonio with outdated technology equipment. Oh, Lord Jesus. Technology and modern organizations. The development of information technology, computers, and electronic communications. Now, mind you, this book, as you can see, these are like early millennium, right? So I'm just gonna like show this so y'all can kind of see what's going on. Self-discipline and the ability to tune out her spouse, children, and pets. For the more sociable and emotionally needy, it can feel like house arrest, especially if the phone hasn't rung in a while. Making sociological work, corporate strategist. I'm just going to post this here so y'all can read it on your own time. The McDonaldization. Oh, yes, this is the part I was really hoping to share with you. So, what is McDonaldization and what are the consequences of high standardized experiences? Not everyone agrees that our society and its organizations are moving away from the Weberian view of rigid, orderly bureaucracies. The idea that we are witnessing a process of debureaucratization, they argue, is overstated. And a contribution to the debate of debureaucratization, George Ritzer of 1993 has developed a vivid metaphor to express his view of the transformations taking place in industrialized societies. He argues that although some tendencies toward debureaucratization have indeed emerged, on the whole, what we are witnessing is a McDonaldization of society. So we're still going through that today. That's the big signal. Pay attention to it. This is not just for the state of Texas. This is like literally for the whole world. Efficiency, calculability, uniformity, and control through automation to show that our society is becoming ever more rationalized with time. The do it yourself sociology, the DIY. So I got to give props to like WWE and the WrestleMania for pushing this subliminally speaking, because this is the world that we live in today. And this is very much the world that I live in today. And it's become this way because the ways and the means that I was taught in college prior to graduation are either outdated or expired. So you have to study other professionals around you. And luckily, YouTube has a plethora of amazing professionals, whether it be religious, spiritual, corporate, creative, artistic, scientific, subliminal, psychological, sociological. There's so much amazing information on YouTube. And so, how socially engaged are you? Robert Putnam and others have bemoaned the fact that Americans are bowling alone and that civic engagement is dead. I would agree with that. Civic engagement to even now today is dead unless you still like to go dancing and clubbing to certain hotspots. Are you an active member of at least one voluntary group or association? I've been volunteering free useful information for a while. Are you a regular volunteer for a non-political group, which could be a church group? But unfortunately, many church groups have taken a political stance, so now that contradicts itself. In the past year, have you tried to resolve a problem in your community? Oh, yes. And I didn't fail at it. I succeeded, but the community just decided to ignore it. In the past year, have you run, walked, or biked for charity? I walked. In the past year, have you done something else to raise money for charity? Oh, yes. Do you regularly vote in elections? Yes. Do you try to persuade others to vote in a particular way? No, I don't persuade them to vote in a certain way. I just give them their options and let them make their own decisions. Do you display a campaign button or sign? At one point, yes. Did you donate money to a political candidate or campaign in the last year? At one point, yes. Do you regularly volunteer for political causes? No, not regularly, unless I know it does directly affect my family, communities, and friends. In the past year, have you contacted a public official? Yes. Contacted the print media to express your opinion? Yes. Contacted the broadcast media to express your opinion? Yes. Protested? Yes. Signed an email petition? Yes. Boycotted? Yes. Canvassed or gone to door to a political social cause? Yes. This is how you can get active, America. Not by fighting and beating people up. It has nothing to do with violence or shooting. I do not represent violence. My brand has never represented violence. So this is just something to confirm. There's some other questions that you could ask yourself too. Different creative ways to consider getting involved with your society and how you can influence or make a positive impact. Social capital, the ties that bind. How do groups and organizations affect your life? Most people join organizations to gain connections and increase their influence. The time and energy invested in an organization can yield valuable rewards. Parents belong to the PTA. Sociologists call these benefits of organizational membership social capital, the social knowledge and connection that enable people to accomplish their goals and extend their influence. This was published in Coleman 1988 and 1990, Lowry 1987, Putin in 1993, and 1995 2000. Social capital is a broad concept that encompasses useful social networks, a sense of mutual obligation and trustworthiness, an understanding of the norms that govern effective behavior, and other social resources that enable people to act effectively. College students often become active in the student government of the campus newspaper, partially because they hope to learn social skills and have make connections that will pay off when they graduate. They may, for example, get to interact with professors, administrators, and even successful alumni who when will go to bat for them when go to bat for them when they are looking for a job or applying to graduate school. Now that I know to be fact because even as a freelance fashion designer and fashion consultant, some of my primary clients that have been loyal to me and yet I've served them in return with product development has literally come from me being a former alumni and staying in touch with other small businesses, corporations that were associated with my school, even though my school no longer exists. So that is very, very true. And both of my daughters have already been benefiting from this. My first daughter is an alumni from the junior college in Uvalde, and my other daughter, who's going to another college, is still growing, learning, serving, and benefiting. This isn't to brag, but these are the things that you should focus on when it comes to societal norms. And also, conclusion, the primary groups of your earliest years were crucial in shaping your sense of self, a sense that changed very slow thereafter. So these are things, concept checks. What is a social capital? We just talked about that. Describe the difference between bridging social capital and bonding social capital. So the global economy and information technology and redefining group life in many diverse ways. For instance, your parents are likely to spend much of their careers in being a part of a larger number network flexible ones, as we just noted. So if you want to talk about social human capital, my parents are Marine Corps veterans. So obviously the status of their social capital is extremely high. Why? Look at all the branches of the military in the United States. Like for reals, there's millions of people that have served. The VA is a corporation within itself. So I'm not trying to brag or anything, but this is why we pray for our soldiers. This is why we pray that our veterans get their benefits. Because, like, hello, they put their life on the line and they shed blood to protect us so we can have all American civilian life. Anyways, this concludes this live teaching from sociology. If you're interested, the essentials of sociology. Whoop whoop. I'm so old, right? So terribly old. I'm putting away laundry too. Thank you, Jesus Christ. I am a whole person and have been for a very long time. There's another book that I want to share with you guys, aside from a former sociology book, but I'm going to have to go grab it. So I will be right back. And this is a book that I did already finish because I needed to for my own mental health and emotional well-being. And I'm also working on laundry today. So this book right here by Kathleen Maxwell Rambie, I actually do know who she really, really is. I was blessed to be introduced to her early last year. I've had the blessing of being her seamstress for some of her business attire. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her based on the book and then what my encounters with her. So she was a widow. She's happily remarried now. She had a very, very healthy, long marriage with her first husband. And when she lost her first husband, and I've never experienced this, but I have experienced through my aunts because a lot of my aunts are widows, and I've worked for other supervisors who had healthy marriages in the past. And it's devastating to witness how when a woman actually does have great marriages, has a great marriage, and that spouse dies, it's not about the money, the property, or what's left behind. It's that absence and that loneliness that burdens that wife in a way that it rocks her whole foundation, where she feels like she needs to resign from her career, even if she's at the top of her career. And so that's something I've seen over and over throughout my life, even in my 20s, 30s, and coming into my 40s. So her book is about grief, and it teaches you how to cope and deal with grief. And so grief has been one of my best teachers. No one signs up for this process that will teach all of us at some time in our life. And after the death of my late husband of 30 years, I knew I was not exempt from the process. And yet, if I had to go through it, I did not want to waste the pain. I quickly discovered that many people did not know much about the process of grief or talk about it. I share it in a transparent and down to earth way. This is easy for those who find themselves in the ashes of life or grief. And so I went to one of her seminars last year with the intention of going to more, but I found my breakthrough within her first class. Now, that may not be for everybody out there, but I was trying to identify with certain patterns that kept repeating in my long-term relationship off and on of 7 years, and why certain things ended up getting so bad and to the point of separation and then restitution and resolution. And so in taking her classes, I was able to identify within myself, but also identify from that partner what was really going on. And we still use a lot of what she teaches today to keep ourselves in check. And so what I love about her book is that she doesn't just talk about her own personal experience and her marriage. She also talks about God, and she talks about scriptures. And so this is a keynote that I'm going to leave with you as well. God has opened many doors to speak, write, and share about many things with many people, and to encourage them and their walk through tough times. Grief is a part of life on this earth. All of us will find ourselves in seasons of grief, and I pray you will not waste that heartache. Let God shape you, grow through the difficult, and discover the new life that God has for you. So, who signs up for grief? Nobody will sign. Nobody signs up for it. When we embrace it, it can be one of our best teachers and can shape us in many positive ways. I think conclusively from what I learned in her book is that you should never take anyone for granted. You shouldn't, because if you take the ones that you care about or you supposedly love for granted, they can literally be snatched from you within 24 hours. I know I learned that as a substitute teacher for 6 years. I learned that as a mother. I learned that as a former spouse 20 years ago. I learned that within my own cousins and aunts. You should just not, and certain friends too. There are certain friends that I lost during COVID that I will never get back physically. And, you know, I stay in touch with their kids, their adult kids and whatnot. And it's so relevant to me personally to honor them and remember them. To me, for her, she wrote in the book also, to me, it meant I was embracing where I was, trusting God and letting go to move forward in my life, even though the future was unknown. This is also really powerful. I have found the why question keeps you stuck and moving through the process. So you should ask why. You should never feel like you can't ask why this happened. Ask God the question, what do you want to work in me and out of me, instead of why did this happen to me? The why question can keep you stuck. So what do you want to work? And I remember there was an article that was published about me and my niece, and I asked, why did they do this to us? Because she kept asking that. She doesn't ask that question anymore. Why did this happen to us? She's just learning to live with it as a little girl. And oh yeah, a lot of people don't know that there are different types of grief. I didn't know until I read her book. There's death, major changes in the season of life, moving to a new location. This was a major situation in 2022, because I thought moving back up to the city everything would get better. When I took a new job, it actually got worse and more challenging. Taking a new job, you try to be optimistic about it, and like I said, it wasn't the students. It was rarely the students. It was trying having the energy to keep up with the students every day and dealing with higher power and administrative positions who undermined your own intelligence and undermined what you were capable of, who didn't really rationalize what it was like to live through threats to your high school and living with the fact that your younger students were just murdered on another campus within the same district. So most teachers today don't even think about what that's like, or how does a person move on as an educator, which is what led me to finally resigning from substitute teaching last holiday season, just because I realized that, you know what, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm in a whole different category versus modern day educators, and it's just, policy can keep changing, but until society stays woke in the state of mind that there needs to be more than just policy changes written on paper, it's more like having to retrain society as to how to pay attention to things. I just decided to keep to myself. Letting go and letting the tears roll and grief is important. It's important to cry, basically, yeah. It is important to cry, and it's important to release that sorrow and not to feel shameful about it. It's not acting, it's reality. And I don't grieve and cry the way I used to in 2022. 2023 was also really hard. And even in 2024, it became less and less and less as I just focused innately and internally on my own self. It got easier and easier. Isaiah 43:18-19 tells us, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams of the wasteland." Of course, we are going to miss what is comfortable and what we have lost and the transition of moving. However, keeping our focus on what is ahead will create an anticipation and an expectancy in our hearts. The death of a dream. Ooh, yeah. When that happened to us in May 24th of 2022, that was a death of the dream. The dream was continuing to work for the Summer Fine Arts Academy. That would be the last year. That was the Beauty and the Beast production we did, which turned into a commemoration where the students wrote poems about their friends and wrote poems about the universe and the stars and did their own thing, mixing all kinds of Disney songs. We would then again never do the Summer Fine Arts Academy. And to this day, I don't even bother looking up or researching what schools are doing Summer Fine Arts Academy. I just continue on my own path designing costumes for my own occasions and other city events or town events. So I'm just going to share this story here, Death of a Dream, so you guys can read that for yourselves. This is a really sad story. Very sad story, but it's relevant and other people can relate to it. So that's why I'm sharing it. As you can see here, in her own book, she published images of her and her husband. There are stages in grief. There are shock, denial, anger, and our anger is usually rooted in one or two things: fear or unforgiveness. Lord, help my heart to be ready and willing to forgive is a good place to start the process. There are new prayers you can do. And of course, forgiveness and grief. To forgive means to cancel or pardon a debt, to stop feeling angry or resentful of someone for an offense or loss. Forgiveness puts us in control, and grief can often make us feel out of control. Focusing on disappointments can lead us to unforgiveness, which leads to anger. Sorrow sets in. There's a risk in loving, and when you love deeply, you can get hurt. But the alternative is a hard heart, which makes you less able to fall in love or grow in love with somebody else. It makes it hard for you to move on. Death is a part of life. We begin to let go. We have no guarantees of tomorrow, and life is short. That's why people always say if you wake up the next day breathing, thank God for it, right? Because you have another chance to fulfill what you didn't fulfill the day before. The importance of tomorrow, because some people don't ever get a tomorrow. And so this is the relevance to it. The major key I learned in the letting go time was asking God each morning, God, what do I need to let go of today? Which is why I'm so happy to start focusing more on the salesmanship of Lady Lyria's fashion consulting with my custom pieces and getting access into my storage once again. So I can sell everything and make my donations and pay my bills, of course. But yeah, in Jesus' name, we do cry and it is exhausting. When you're grieving one person, it hurts. But when you're grieving a whole classroom of students, it hurts even more, especially when you remember specific memories with those students. Um, like I said, learning from Kathleen, learning from her classes, learning from her book helped me out a lot. It's still helping me out to this day. I highly recommend her book. You can find it on Amazon. This is a testimony in the body of Jesus Christ that you need to be open to learning from other people who have traveled down roads that you have not yet traveled, because that can help you move forward. Aside from that, that concludes, and I'll be making another video about a few other books that I've been into for the past 6 months of the past year.